Did you know that Disney owns everything? I did, but you didn't, which makes you stupid. And one of these properties that the House of Mouse owns just so happens to be one of my childhood favorite book series. No, not that one. I do like that one. I didn't read that one. Is that controversial to say? I wish. Thanks, Disney. You clicked on the video. Of course, I'm talking about Goosebumps. Goosebumps, written by the gloriously ghoulish R.L. Steins. These books had haunted elementary school libraries even older since I was a kid. What? That's not... Did I put that in a script? These books have haunted elementary school libraries even since I was a kid. They were my go-to book series at school, and they were my first introduction to the genre of horror. I owe so much to this series, and I also owe a lot to the 90s Canadian television series that sought to adapt all of these books. Did you know that Ryan Gosling starred in an episode?
Don't you get it? It predicts the future. And it makes it bad.
It's cheesy and spooky, just like how I like my pizza. So when I heard that Disney was going to make their own Goosebumps television show alongside Sony Network, I said, yeah, that makes sense. And on October 13th, 2023, the first 5 episodes dropped on Disney+, with single episodes thereafter. Although the show did big viewership numbers when it initially dropped, a lot of critical responses and fan responses to the show was somewhat mixed and apprehensive. It walked like Goosebumps, it talked like Goosebumps, but it didn't necessarily feel like Goosebumps. And even though I didn't have very fond memories of watching this Goosebumps series the first time it came out, hey, I'm just happy to be getting any sort of Goosebumps content in 2025. This series even has Justin Long as basically the central figurehead of the series. So that plus Goosebumps equals I have no idea. So let's take a look at it. In this extremely spooky month of January, let's take another look at Disney's Goosebumps series. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Viewer beware. You might be in for a scare. So the first episode would seem to imply that these Goosebumps episodes will be following the same structure as the original book and even the original television series, with episodes adapting specific stories into 30-minute adventures. However, unlike those original stories, this series has decided to not be an anthology series, a bunch of stories that aren't necessarily connected, and decide to make one long episodic journey over these 10 episodes in its first season. And this Goosebumps tale kicks off with one of the least scary Goosebumps books, in my opinion, but I do recognize how cool it is. Say cheese and die.
Say cheese!
Why didn't he put down the camera? I still don't get why you can't just put it in a drawer. It's gone now. Now, the first thing I noticed as a fan of Goosebumps is that it doesn't very initially feel like Goosebumps. Honestly, this series started to feel more like a Riverdale episode than it did a Goosebumps story. And I promise I don't mean that as an insult. There's just so much going on. The main character, Isaiah, is a football player / popular kid who's dating Allison, who has an online bully trolling her and the rest of other kids at school, who secretly is Isabella. And Isaiah's best friend is Sam, who's rich and is into this one kid at school, but is too scared to go up and talk to him. However, Isaiah's neighbor Margot, who's daughter's to the school principal, who's also dealing with a weird new teacher that just inherited a haunted house or whatever, kind of has a thing for Isaiah, but the school principal is currently sleeping with the local shop owner that he hasn't told his daughter that he's sleeping with, because that daughter thinks that the principal dad is still married to her mom, which is not true, or it's kind of true, but not really. And the local shop owner's kid, Lucas, is the weird Johnny Knoxville type, as you do, and also has a thing for Margot, which makes Isaiah mad, and his girlfriend breaks up with him, and then also Isabella's there. Point is, there is a lot of drama and a little bit of Goosebumps right off the bat. Once you kind of get into the flow of things, they start to introduce more and more Goosebumps elements as it feels, so I can appreciate this first episode for establishing the base plate of our story, which we can build off of. However, what you need to know in this story is that 5 or so high school kids start to experience weird and creepy things after encountering different iconic and haunted objects at a Halloween party in what they thought was an abandoned mansion, but is now the home to the new English teacher, who gets possessed.
Why? Why
Why would you do that, man? That's not cool.
See, this is what I was talking about. Why are we touching his stuff? And I'll make sure to mention it here. This show's cast is really great.
Listen.
I haven't seen much of them anywhere else, except Rachel Harris. I do appreciate you, Rachel Harris, Mama Heffley.
I'm sorry, women.
But like I said, there's barely any say cheese and die in this. It feels like it's almost just at the end of the episode, and then the story just kind of ends. It's kind of unfortunate to see that great book kind of squashed into this drama sandwich that's only meant to serve up the rest of the episodes. It's not a bad first episode, but it doesn't really assure me that this series is going to be a great Goosebumps series. But now, Episode 2 sets up one of the greatest Goosebumps stories of all time, The Haunted Mask. That's The Haunted Mask? What? This is The Haunted Mask. This is The Haunted Mask. That is something you get at Spirit Halloween. No, that's something that's less. You'd get something cooler. They're going for a more metaphorical haunted mask because Isabella is the main character of this episode and she feels invisible at school and she's secretly the troll that's messing with other people, which doesn't really come back. So fine, I think the story does make it somewhat worth it and it is cool. However, it feels like it's at the cost of that Goosebumps flavor. This show is already taking major liberties with a lot of classic Goosebumps stories, so I honestly think that this episode could have been a better adaptation of Let's Get Invisible. While a much less popular Goosebumps story than the former, the story could have been about how Isabella sort of It's a Wonderful Life's herself, thinking that she's invisible and all that jazz. When that feeling is unintentionally granted to her, she now has to work to make herself heard and seen. To me, this is a much more beautiful and metaphorical change of her character because those feelings are so relatable to today's audiences. But instead, we get this plain looking haunted mask. That's not what I was expecting. What is she, Batman?
Stop this! This isn't you!
Or Gollum? Getting past the mask, this episode's cool. I did like it. But I'm just dying to get some of that more Goosebumps personality. Where is it? Where's the fun? Where's the silliness? There's nothing in the show so far that tells me that this is going to be a silly, fun Goosebumps episode. Well, episode 3 is about Isaiah's best friend James, who finds himself haunted by the Cuckoo Clock of Doom. The Cuckoo Clock of Doom! This episode, and the last, I would argue a little bit, is when we really kick in the Goosebumps into high gear, and where the kids start to realize that everything around them is going spooky wooky. The story of this episode is that when James runs into this cuckoo clock, he finds out that he can reverse time, which he very quickly starts to use to his advantage, which is a very fresh idea to the story. However, he unintentionally makes evil copies of himself that try to take over his life and look for some mysterious object in the local caves. And what's really cool is that these clones explode goo. Not how I meant to make it sound.
Am I crazy? Do these guys smell like watermelon
Jolly Ranchers!
And honestly, episode 4 might be my favorite. Thankfully, building off the drama and the stories from the last 3 episodes, see, I said it was going to come back, Go Eat Worms follows the Daredevil kid from before, Lucas. He deals with having a lost parent in a tragic stunt accident, and even though he still has his loving mother, he wants to make up for his father's passing by performing the trick his father failed to do. I feel like in a lesser story, the worms would feel random, because Lucas does just randomly eat them as a gross stunt to impress Margot. However, but his character is dealing with so much and he's feeling so many feelings, and the scene leading up to it is so great. When he does eat the worms, it feels random, but it feels like it makes sense. It feels like an anxiety-fueled, spontaneous action, which sets up the story quite nicely. And the finale of this episode is awesome. From a crazy action-packed chase sequence through the woods, running from a giant horde of monster worms, to one of the most tragic reveals I never expected to get from a Goosebumps TV show.
Your dad didn't do this run because he thought he could make it.
What are you talking about?
Which I don't think I can show on YouTube, because YouTube would rather not acknowledge mental health because it doesn't exist, you know?
I'm doing my part. I didn't do fuck.
So now every kid is on the same page. These last few episodes, they wrap up the spooky story and they reveal why all these spooky things have been going on. You see, Justin Long inherits a haunted house from his ancestor, who someone happens to be Harold Biddle, a kid that mysteriously died in a fire. His vengeful soul is then linked to all the haunted objects these kids had found at the party. The house fire is revealed to have been accidentally caused by the main kid's parents, who did it trying to save Harold and the town from the evil, demonic, possessed Slappy, the poster child of any great Goosebumps story. My favorite is going to be the original 90s Canadian series, because he is so terrifying here.
Guess who?
I like how he looks in this series too.
He's going to ruin our plans. They're delivering it tonight. Deal with him.
But I didn't expect the sexy British voice. That was kind of weird. My only issue with this interpretation of Slappy is that in other interpretations, he's known to walk around and he's able to like possess things and be like a real threat. The problem here is that they don't know how to keep Slappy genuinely terrifying for a prolonged period of time, because at most points he's just sitting on the ground and looking at people doing the things that he wants. Honestly, I thought he looked like a baby sometimes. It was kind of funny and it was kind of cute. So after hearing the events of The Night of the Living Dummy, everything comes to a head in the finale, You Can't Scare Me, which is nowhere close to an adaptation. They just ripped the title and ran with it. Everyone goes back to their lives, and the series ends in classic Goosebumps fashion with what is it called? A cliffhanger. Ironic. That leads into more episodes? Huh? This is the end of the story. Why are we getting more? What could happen from here on out? Everything's solved, everything's done. Night of the Living Dummy Part 2? Okay, what's happening now? In the last 2 episodes of Goosebumps, Night of the Living Dummy Part 2 and the finale, which is the most disappointing Goosebumps adaptation of this series in my opinion, welcome to Horrorland. Justin Long's character digs up Slappy to write a better ending to a book based off of everything he just experienced. However, Slappy obviously takes advantage of him and tries to start the dummy apocalypse, where Slappy is going to, stay with me, open the gates of a monstrous hell by sacrificing a tower full of dummy mind-controlled citizens in order to destroy the world for the events of a real war that happened to the original person who would go on to possess the dummy, in which he found the ancient spooky curses to become eternal. So now he's trying to do it all over again, and Justin Long caused it, so thanks. It's a finale that didn't feel necessary, and even ends on a way more depressing note when the main character, Isaiah, gets shot, dies, and then is resurrected through the curses that brought Slappy back to life, and then Justin Long's character is going to be possessed by Slappy's ghost for the rest of his life. I don't know if I like this ending, because typical Goosebumps ending does leave a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth, but it makes sense and it's spooky. This one just feels mean. Overall, upon a rewatch, I appreciate this series way more than I did for the first time. I loved how much fun the show had with the inspirations it took from the books, not necessarily the adaptations. Yeah, there's a lot of drama, and the ending is kind of weird, but the Goosebumps is definitely a show I had a spooky good time watching. And it's perfect that there's going to be a season 2 starring David Schwimmer, because what I like about these 2 seasons, because they're separate, they're not continuing the same story. The first season felt like good old-fashioned classic Goosebumps spooky time, and then the second season feels like they're diving into the subgenre of sci-fi horror with a bunch of those classic Goosebumps books, which I have here. Stay Out of the Basement, The Girl Who Cried Monster, Monster Blood, Haunted Car, Ghost Next Door, and Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I don't know if that's going to necessarily be adapted, but that would be cool. So, in classic Goosebumps fashion, I'll leave you with a scary fun fact. We are now closer to the year 2040 than we were to the year 2000. 2010, actually, if we're going to get even scarier. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Goosebumps. Viewer beware. You're in for a scare.